Hello and welcome to the Michael Mama Show, Ancient Secrets Revealed. Coming to you from Mount Soma, home of the Sri Someshwara Temple in the mountains of western North Carolina. And boy, there's just so much to talk about. And again, these podcasts are really just created out of random thoughts I have during the week, from things I hear, from the news I watch, from conversations Punaji and I have in the temple, just what have you. Um, um, in the blogs, I put down my notes for the week. I rearrange them a little bit, but I don't really, just kind of put them in order so they all come together, because I'll have a thought here and then later I'll have another thought about the same subject. So I put them together. But other than that, the blogs are unedited. Uh, and also, it's important, and I say this in my classes too, that I'm not trying to tell you and feed you what I think you're supposed to think or believe. Uh, and so I don't try to, cookie cutter things into a very absolute set of facts, and if you just get these facts, then you get what I'm teaching, and whatever. Uh, it's more food for thought. My blog notes are that way. A lot of times they're even incomplete thoughts, and a lot of times the notes in the blogs are more thoroughly addressed in the podcast. But nevertheless, uh, you find truth within yourself. And a real teacher doesn't teach facts. A real teacher facilitates your own inner exploration so you can find that place inside where you're already one with Chaitanya, already one with the unified field of physics, already one with that one thing that is the source of everything. And if it's a source of everything, then everything in its essence is that. And if you are one with that, then you're one with everything. So you already know everything. Uh, I know somebody once heard me say that and say, well, if I already know everything, I don't need to be here. So, don't need to listen to your lectures. Well, see, the idea is that we get distracted from that inner place of knowing, that inner, divinity, if you will, what some people would refer to as God, Ishvara, Chaitanya, so many different names, the Christ, uh, but if we get distracted, we get we just start to ignore that deeper truth of the essence of who we are, and that ignoring is the source of ignorance. So we get so caught up in the surface, and so that's really the purpose of my teachings, the way I teach what I teach, is for you to find it within yourself. Now, there are a lot of great facts out there, and learning all those facts and everything, that all has a value. But your relationship with that makes all the difference. And if your relationship with any worldview, with any set of perspectives or facts or ideas, if you just lose yourself to it, then you become compromised, and that's what's happened in the world today. That's why in the title of this podcast, Hidden in Plain View, Blown in the Winds of Time, uh, uh, the world is not as we've been led to believe. We consider ourselves educated if we get indoctrinated into a certain set of thinking, and we become really good at it. And the better at it we become, the more educated we consider ourselves. And though that certainly does have a value on its own level, real wisdom, real knowledge goes much deeper. And that's what really wisdom, that's what really human evolution, that's what really even enlightenment, if you will, that's what it's really about, you see. Uh, Knowing all about something is not the same as actually becoming it. Truth is not a set of facts. It's an abstraction. It's a state of being, pure isness. And the ancient seers, the ancient rishis, they're called, the real knowers of truth. They lived from that place, and they spoke. They cognized Veda. They gave the knowledge, but that ancient knowledge must be expressed in a manner that's acceptable, that's palatable, that's comprehended to modern thought. We think differently. Every true knowledge is eternal, but the way it's expressed has to be expressed eternally to interface with the mentality of the people of the time. And that's really one of the big problems with, religion, is that it's being expressed in a way that, obviously a very large percentage of humanity they can't buy it. It just doesn't make any sense of the modern mentality. It's not expressed well, and again, I like driving by these Baptist churches that have their little billboards and they change the message every week, and they're great. God loves you. That's one. What does that mean? And in the modern mentality, what it means is la la land nonsense to most people. But there's a reality to the mechanics of creation, the nature of existence, the nature of that one thing out of which everything emerges and then gravitates back to, just like a tree. I mean, it's all over. You just look around, it's all in plain sight wherever you look. The water comes from the ocean, evaporates, goes up into the clouds, rains down on the mountaintop, comes down the stream, and that's life right there. That's why Siddhartha got enlightened looking at a river, right? And how the water flowed through it, as the story goes. Acorns fall from the tree and go to the earth, build another tree, more acorns, and the cycle continues. And so the big picture of human evolution, of everything, not just human evolution, of all things, is that things emerge from relativity and from the absolute go into relativity. What does relativity mean? Knowledge is no longer absolute. It's relative. Relative to what? Relative to the current mentality, the mode of thought of the people at the time. You see, so we get lost in the relative and everything becomes relative. And even the sense of that one source that is the essence of all existence, the knowledge, the intelligence, the creativity that birthed this whole universe, the sense of all that is just nothing more than a vague sense. And it's a vague sense to varying degrees. Some people feel it very deeply, which is remarkable. Even back in ancient times, see, the mentality was different. People couldn't understand it intellectually, perhaps, but they didn't need to, because at that time they could feel it. They could feel that divinity. And that was enough for them to build huge temples and all sorts of incredible things that they did, all in the name of their God, you see? But now it has to make sense. That's the mentality we live in today. And the great thing is it does make sense. But how that is expressed, is a delicate thing, and it's a subtle thing. And that's really what I'm dedicated to. And also bringing forth that knowledge in a viable way, because there's the Veda. The Veda is basically that one thing, that source of all knowledge, and the Veda is, as Swami Muktananda and even some modern physicists are even saying, the unified field. The more they look at it, it's just consciousness. So consciousness interacts with itself, creates this multiplicity, but within the absolute, that self-interacting dynamic has not lost sense of its true nature, oneness. But when it emerges, bhavati tam, when it emerges into relativity, then we lose ourselves to that sense of other. And then we're just gone. We're off on a trip where it's like a house of mirrors, you know? Uh, and the world needs to understand that, you know? Uh, because without that understanding, we get lost in these paradigms, and it's just like a kite spinning without a tail. You know, a kite needs a tail, you know? And it's just a physiological reality, it's a nature of existence. It's not just a philosophy, it's not just a belief system, it's not just a paradigm, it's a state of physiology of consciousness, physiology of being. And in a world without that, you know, the world has lost its common sense. Uh, and just, I mean, if you just watch the news, that's why I put some stuff down in the blog. I also add some things about current events. Because if you just look at what's going on in the world today, you're going to realize there so much is going on that we've just lost our touch with common sense. And we've got caught up in these ridiculous paradigms and cling to those and decide that's knowledge, you know? So, what is common sense? Common sense is nothing more than sensing into that underlying basis, that source of all the intelligence, creativity, harmony, understanding, wisdom, that is the source of everything. It's touching into that one thing that is common to everything, that underlies everything. When you sense into that, when you live from that place, then you have common sense. And refined common sense is nothing other than wisdom. And it has many facets. Another facet is just intelligence. And that intelligence emerges in different ways, different languages. It's expressed even in its pure state. It's expressed through the mentality of the times. It's multifaceted. But when we lose touch with it, then the world just goes completely nuts, you know? I saw this Mahatma Gandhi quote, and I liked it. It said, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. There's a beauty to that because, you know, I am that, thou art that. All of this is nothing but that. I am one with you. We are one. If I serve you, I serve myself, that kind of idea. So that the idea that the ego doesn't go away, it expands to include everything. You know, they say, get rid of the ego. Well, get rid of the small notion of ego, the narrow-mindedness of ego. And in that sense, the ego doesn't go away in that sense. But that small ego goes away because it becomes bigger until it includes everything. And that's a great quote of Gandhi's. But the thing is that know that if you live that, if you really live that, people that are really living that are living in a way that is so contrary to how most of the world thinks, that what kicks in is projective identification. Projective identification is, well, I think this way, and therefore you think that way. And therefore, if you're saying this, it really can't be true because it's not the way I think. And so therefore, it's not the way you think. So you project your worldview onto other people. And so if you see somebody who's really dedicating their life to something, just spirituality, you say, to the world, other people don't believe it. Other people don't believe it. They think, oh, you're out for the money or the glory or the whatever. See, it all becomes projective identification. So it's a great Gandhi quote, but it's a little sticky, you know, it's a little tricky. There are a couple of terms, and again, I'm not going to give you a real precise definition of these, perhaps, because these words, see, Vedic terms, they have meaning on multiple levels. Um, all the different, we're talking about Sanskrit here, and Sanskrit is a language of nature. Nature doesn't speak in the language of humans. Nature speaks in a language that is beyond the comprehension of identities and paradigms and the languages that most of us speak. It's a language of nature. And one such term is called apurva. And apurva, I mean, there are discourses on apurva and what it means, what it is. And some say it can't be grasped, it can't. But really, apurva, if we're going to explore the unexplorable, if you want to say it that way, apurva means like it just is. You can, if you want, you can go on Wikipedia and they have some write up about it that'll give you some idea. But it's not with the beginning. It's not created. It's not with, and it just is. It's just what is, And in the one sense, you can hear that and say, "Well, okay, what is? Okay, great, apurva." But it's so much more than that too, because apurva, in Punjaji and I in the temple, we have really enjoy discussing these things together, But apurva, if you explore the word, it becomes a deep kind of sense for your relationship of what is around you right now, what's in your room or in your car, wherever you happen to be when you're listening to this. It just is. It's apurva. It's without cause. It's beyond cause and effect. It's beyond karma. It's just what is. It's apurva. And it's like the Chaitanya itself, the absolute. It's beyond relativity. And relativity emerges out of it. Why? Just because it's its nature. It just is. But now there's another interesting term. It's called adrishta, because, we think oftentimes that, you've got the absolute manifesting, and then you've got it interacting with the field of karma. And I've talked about, karma and that prana, that manifestation makes mind. And so the field of Jyotish, which, poorly translated as astrology, but it's so much more than that. It's knowledge of the nature of existence in its most integrated state and its most transgradient sense. The whole arena of mapping, So Jyotish is a huge knowledge. And so the thing is, much of what's functioning in that realm of the unknowable, you could say, because it's not of apurva, it's not apurva, it's the mechanism of existence. You see, that's Jyotish. But then there's a whole thing that a lot of people don't realize, and that is adrishta. Adrishta means not knowable, not seeable. It's a mechanism that is in the field of karma, but it's so subtle, it's so deep. It's like if life was a big pool of water, a very deep sea, say, and what we can see on the surface, the laws of karma, what we try to fathom with our minds or with Jyotish, astrology, whatever the system is, we're just looking at the surface, really, because a drishta is that which is not knowable, it's not seeable. And so a lot of times, you'll even have Jyotishis who look at something and say, well, I can't see that in the chart. I don't know why that happened. Well, it's because it's the drishta. It's a mechanism that's a deep current underlying existence that influences the course of existence on the surface, but the cause and effect relationship is not seeable. So those are just a couple of great terms. And I mean, we just touched on them here, but there's things you can explore and reflect upon. And I think it gives us a deeper relationship, with life, but those explorations need to be done with humility. Otherwise we turn them into something that we get. And I call that the I get it syndrome, so the depth of our wisdom, the depth of our inner knowing is beyond knowability. It's no thingness. You see, it's not something you can grab onto. couple other points then. We have the absolute, we have Chaitanya, we have the transcendent, the unified field, the one thing that is the source of everything. And then that's called Veda, the Veda. Now, there's also things called Tantra. Have I talked about this before, Scotty, in the podcast? I don't know.
Tantra? No, I don't think.
No? Okay. In Tantra has left-handed Tantra and right-handed Tantra. Right-handed Tantra is like engineering. It's like how to implement those subtle laws of nature of the Veda, how to implement those into like a technology. And meditation is a form of right-handed Tantra. But now it's also left-handed Tantra. Left-handed Tantra is something very different. Left-handed Tantra, I like to use the analogy that, if you have a fuse that blows in the house and you don't have any lights and you don't have an extra fuse, you may just take some aluminum foil and cram it in where the fuse goes and boom, the lights go back on. But the thing is, you can burn the house down that way. That's similar to left-handed Tantra. It's like short-circuiting, bypassing the laws of nature, circumventing them, using them inappropriately, and you can get quick results. But it's really destructive. It can be destructive. It can kill you, but it can also just tear your chakras open. There are left-handed Tantra techniques where you tear your third eye open, all of a sudden light floods in and you decide you're enlightened, And the problem with the world today is that people like instant results, and they like things that go bang, and so there's a lot of implementation of left-handed Tantra that people are doing in the name of spiritual growth. I remember this was years ago, and I wasn't there when he said it, but I heard that there's this great teacher that had an ashram on the Ganges, and he said, and some of the people that were seeing him were planning on going to see some guru, if you will, just down the Ganges ways. And he told them, he said, if you do that, they will find your body floating, your dead body, floating down the Ganges. And I think I understood just recently more deeply what he's talking about, because it's not just literally, okay, your physical body's going to die, but what's going to happen is you'll be in the Ganges, but your spiritual understanding and everything will be essentially, overstated perhaps, but dead, and so the point is that's why Adi Shankara, the great saint, said that the spiritual path is a path of discernment. It's a path of discernment, and discernment just isn't done with the intellect, certainly not by abiding by a paradigm that you follow. The discernment also involves how it feels, but not on the surface, not based on your superficial emotions that oftentimes are largely a matter of indoctrination and, identity with your friends or whatever, but feeling deep into your essence. Because you see, we think our way through life, but better, we feel our way through life, because we can feel into that self-interacting dynamic of pure isness that is our essence, our divinity, our wisdom. And then, because you can justify anything with the intellect, you see, that's an important phrase there. You can justify anything with the intellect. But when the intellect aligns with that deeper level of existence that we feel into, it's the integrations of thought with those deep, subtle, refined feelings. That's called discernment, you see. Did I say that okay, Scott? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Another thing, this was just pretty cool. And again, it's something I just want to throw out because I think it gives you a feeling perhaps of how we access, knowledge or how we work with things. It's not that we're looking for a cookie cutter definition, but it's an exploration. And let's see, how did this come about? It's coming to me. I went to the temple and I was going to get, I get a half a dozen flowers every day and I put them around. I put one in front of Lakshmi here, who's back from the temple after the, Mother Divine, 9 days of Mother Divine and all that. So she'll be with me now, for the rest of the year until next year at this time. But anyway, the flowers were in some water. And so I was outside. I was actually doing some work outside the temple. And Pundit walked out to the front door there briefly. And he said, "Oh, your flowers are right here." And I said, "Oh, can you," because I was all sweaty. I didn't think I should go into the temple and I'd have to take my boots off and everything. So he said, "Well, can you set them on the table?" And he said, "No, water." He said, "Water." So I didn't know. I said, "Oh, okay," But the next day I asked him about it, and it was very interesting. He said that the water that he uses, that he even touches in the Rudra-abhishek and the ceremonies in the temple, it has to be purified. And you see, and this is such a cool thing, because I remember there was a guy in Germany, a scientist, and he was talking about water and how it's has polarity to it. It's has a north and a south pole in a sense, and so. And this German scientist was saying that when all the water molecules are lined up, it becomes more coherent. Kind of like a magnet, all the north and south poles line up, and it becomes more coherent, more harmonious, healthier. But he was saying the problem is that if you take some purified water that's all lined up and coherent, and so it radiates that coherence, if you drink it or what have you, if you run it through a pipe 10 foot long, it breaks up all the coherence and it just becomes a chaos of mumble jumbled little independent water molecules. Does that make sense, Scotty?
Yeah, they have things that supposedly line up the molecules. I've seen people talking about structured water
and so here's what I want to do. So, and you reminded me of it. In the temple, pundits will do a chant to align the water molecules, to purify the water before they use it. And so I asked Punji, and he chanted that chant for me. And I'll tell you, I mean, to hear it was like, whoa, and you could just feel it, And so I recorded him. I asked him if he would just make a recording of it, and he did, and he sent it to me. And I'm going to play it for you. But here's something that I found it really interesting is that the chant was great. You'll hear it. I think you'll get a feel for it. But to actually hear a physical being chant it, there's more there. It's kind of like, Scotty, it makes me think about, how a lot of the students, when I started podcasting, said, well, it's so much better to be right there in the room with you. Remember that?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And it was similar to that, okay, you can hear the chant and it's great and all, but to actually be in the physical presence, it makes it's completely different. Okay.
Well, it's like maybe CD versus record too. The CDs, they're X's and O's or whatever, but like where a record has all the, in between.
Yeah, I hear that, and you're right, but it's
but hearing it live is a whole different level.
There you go. It's so much different than, that's right. So anyway, I'm going to play it and we'll see how it goes. Here it comes.
कलशेषु धावति पवित्रे परिषिच्यते उक्थैर्यज्ञेषु वर्धते आपो वा इदगुं सर्वं विश्वा भूतान्यापः प्राणा वा आपः पशव आपोन्नमापोऽमृतमापः सम्राडापो विराडापः स्वराडापश्छन्दा गुष्यापो ज्योतिगुष्यापो यजो गुष्यापः सत्यमापः सर्वा देवता आपो भूर्भुवस्सु वरापवो गंगे च यमुने चैव कृष्णे गोदावरि सरस्वती नर्मदे सिन्धु कावेर्यो जलेऽस्मिन् सन्निधिं कुरु.
That was good. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But and you can, if you're just innocent, you know, these things. If you're just innocent about it, innocent means, you know, you're not sitting there saying, oh, well, this or that, or oh, I don't feel anything. But if you're just with it, Scotty, could you feel it like affects
Yeah.
the physiology? You know,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Hair started standing up on my arms.
what's that?
I said the hair started standing up on my arms.
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome. You know, it really is.
But it makes sense, you know, because it's all these vibrations, and what's coming out of him is like, you know,
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And see, water holds energy. That's the point. And it can hold any kind of energy. It can hold good energy, it can hold bad energy. And when you purify the water, then it holds healthy energy.
yeah.
Yeah. But
Well,
with
have you seen
water,
the Japanese guy that has those experiments too, where they played different music to different water and then froze it, and the crystals showed up like,
no way.
yeah, real
That
different.
is cool.
I don't know if
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. There's so much like that. And even the whole arena of nanotechnology, which is another subject, and how just with a little bit of these natural nano things dumped into a whole lake, you can purify the lake, you know?
Mhm.
So there's so much. And that kind of knowledge, you know, when that kind of knowledge will come out, that kind of knowledge will come out when the global consciousness becomes purified. Because as we purify the environment, and I'm not talking about the surface environment, I'm talking about the subtle environment. We're talking about the level that you might call Akash, you know. But that deeper level, when that gets purified, then the mentality of the people gets purified, and we don't become so entrenched into a worldview and a perspective. The mind becomes free. We actually start using more and more percentage of, you know, they say you only use 10% of your brain. Well, that's true, but the gateway to that, you know, isn't taking a pill or what have you. It's purification of the environment, and that, once that happens, then then all these technologies of how the ancients, you know, built these pyramids and things like that. They talk about that they levitated the blocks or what have you. All kinds of technologies, the Vimana, you know, the flying machines, all like that. That comes out, but the consciousness of the world has to become purified, and they actually provide. It's in the Vedic literature how to build a purifier for global consciousness. And that's actually what we're trying to do here at Mount Soma. We got a long ways to go, but we've come a long ways too.
Well, I remember coming to the retreats too, Michael, and like you'd come from like Los Angeles and go into the retreat, and then it took you a while to like all of a sudden everything kind of calmed down, because maybe the first lecture you gave, it's like, okay, what, you know, trying to grasp what you're saying or anything, but then as you know, you start to round, and it started to kind of like settle down, and you could start to, I don't know, it just
Here,
kind of,
you can start to hear it.
yeah.
There's a lot of truth to that. I mean, that was my experience too. You know, I mean, I've been meditating for 50 years now, I think it is. Yeah. And that's right. The solution to wars, the solution to poverty, the solution to disease, the solution to famine, it's all about purification of global consciousness, you know? And for a number of years, I mean, a long time, I've been teaching, and it was more on a level of individuals, and, you know, try to get a community here, try to get Mount Soma going and trying to get it jump started. And it's at a point now, it is at a point now where now we're thinking about no longer focus on individuals, but focus on this unified field generator, you could call it, this purifier of global consciousness. And so that's really where my attention has gone. I used to teach in a very organized way, didn't I, Scotty? You know, I'd give classes 4 times a year, in San Francisco or LA or Rhode Island or wherever, New York, of course, Mount Soma. And now my interaction with individuals is more, it's almost like random, you know. The time is right, the situation is right. I bump into some people at the temple or whatever, we get into a conversation. But I haven't been doing it. The nearest thing to orderly discourses go is these podcasts, and then every so often a group requests me to give a lecture, and I'll do that, you know. I put in my notes, you know, the deep lack of understanding of cultures. Cultures are there to culture the mentality of the people, to culture their lives. Tradition, for example, it provides a structure for public discourse, even human interaction. It creates an environment and a situation that then facilitates, when a culture is healthy, to facilitate the evolution and growth of the individuals, of the people. You see? But it's gotten to the point now where, see, there are different subcultures within a culture. And that's healthy. There will always be that way. You know, it's great that we have these different ethnic groups, for example, these different races, and they all have their own subcultural characteristics. And it's not about, boy, there was a word I heard, I wish I could remember. It was just like, oh, it's just so horrifying to me. But basically, they just wanted to take all that down, tear all that down. Let's have a homogenous world. And it's not the way it is. It's not the way it's supposed to be. There will always be more than one type of flower in the garden of life. You see? And so it's not racist to uphold cultural integrity. You see? There was thank God, I can't remember who it was. I can see his face. I don't know his name. I can't remember if he was a senator or a congressman, but he made this comment about Russia that just horrified me. He said, we have to promote a jihad against the conservative Christian nation of Russia. I couldn't believe my ears, you know. Things have gotten so secular that different cultures have even been perceived then as a threat to humanity that we have to overthrow. And I did a little thing here on Ukraine, and I guess I should mention it because here's the bottom line with Ukraine. What's his name? The president of Ukraine. What's the guy's name? Scotty, I'm spacing. Anyway, he, they wanted to make Ukraine part of NATO.
Zelensky or something.
Yeah, but Zelensky. Yeah. They wanted to make Ukraine part of NATO. Well, you have to understand that to Putin, that's a little bit like the Cuban Missile Crisis. You know, back when they wanted to basically make Cuba a satellite of Russia and put nuclear weapons there, you know, that whole thing with Kennedy and Bay of Pigs and all that. It's not acceptable. And that's how Putin felt about it. I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm saying that's how they felt about it, and I can understand why. And so they kept getting prodded. Russia kept getting prodded. And but here's the crazy thing, is that the buzz is that the administration in the United States wanted to take down Putin. wanted to take down Russia, but really focused on Putin. And so they did not want to negotiate. There could have been early on negotiation between Russia and Ukraine, and something could have been reconciled, but it wasn't even attempted. It was blocked largely by the United States. Was that clear, Scotty, what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's just so wrong. It's just so wrong. But the thing that horrifies me the most about it, the most reprehensible thing, where I just go emotionally, okay, is that the children, and yeah, all people, but for me, it just goes even deeper into my heart. The children that are suffering as a result of the conflict, it just appalls me. It sickens me. And it's not being dealt with because of political agendas, dethroning Putin, or how can they do it? How can we allow that sort of thing to go on? And then that leads into this other thing about that is a pet peeve of mine, these rubber stamp politicians. Now we have this thing November 8th coming up with Democrats, Republicans, and it's almost like what a political party wants in a politician has nothing to do with the integrity of the person, nothing to do with the conviction of the person, nothing to do with the forthrightness of the person. What it has to do with is, will this person be a good rubber stamp? Whatever we want to propose, will they just rubber stamp it? Yeah, okay, it's coming from my party, and therefore I'm just going to go with it. And that's not what a politician should be. They shouldn't just be a rubber stamp. Some people would even argue that Biden was a rubber stamp for a background group that's actually running the country. And the reason they wanted Biden in there is because he would rubber stamp whatever they said. And I'm just saying, I'm not here to criticize Biden. I'm not here to criticize Trump. I'm not here to do any of that. It's just, let's just take a step back, And then there's this guy, Kanye West. You know who he is, Scotty? Kanye West? Yeah. I don't know much about him. But one thing I do know about him is the guy has no rubber stamp,
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wish we didn't have any rubber stamp. The idea that you can have a bill come up and all the Democrats vote one way and all the Republicans vote another way, that's rubber stamp. That's the only way that would happen.
Yeah.
I want people that are free thinkers. And
it's a system failure. You keep saying that.
What's that?
It's a system failure. The system is broken. And
yeah, it's just not right. I mean, fine, we can have Democrats and Republicans, but they shouldn't be rubber stamps. That's all. It shouldn't be that way. The other thing about these elections, they're saying that they want, days before people have to be allowed to vote and days afterwards it takes to count the votes in each state. The whole country of France, they vote in one day, and by the end of the day, the votes are finalized, counted, and it's over. So I think we need to connect the dots here. I think I'm going to leave it to you to think about why. Why is it that way? What's the motivation behind making it that way? 1 in 4 San Francisco residents have been victims of assault.
1 in 4?
1 in 4.
Wow.
That's horrible.
Glad I'm not there anymore.
Yeah. It's unbelievable what's going on in the world, man. The other thing is, I want to talk a little bit about oil. First of all, there was even a professor of economics that said that his students even have a hard time grasping supply and demand. I mean, that's like saying for a math professor to say that most of his students are having a hard time comprehending addition. I mean, it's just so fundamental.
Well, but
You
it
know?
doesn't. But see, I guess it could be because of the strange nature, the way that supply and demand works now. You know,
There you go. Is that, and that's right. The whole thing is so complicated. The economy is so complex that it doesn't make sense. And the laws then that get created by a bunch of politicians that I think a lot of them maybe don't even understand supply and demand. I don't know.
right.
But that just the nonsense that gets created because there's just a lack of fundamental understanding of how the world works. Do you know right now there's 21 days. In 21 days, they're saying that if nothing happens, we're going to be out of diesel fuel. Do you know that the United Kingdom government has forecasted that through this winter, there are going to be 10,000 deaths due to people freezing to death due to lack of energy? Do you know that in Russia, people are chopping down the ancient forests and that just to get firewood to make it through the winter? In Poland, there are huge long lines people waiting days to get coal so they don't freeze to death. Do you know that the Russian ruble is super high right now? And so the people that are really suffering from Ukraine, even it's not really the Russians, it's the Europeans and what they're about to face through this winter because there's no oil. Now we could have remedied that, but we refused to. And the Saudis, obviously, they've really had it with Biden, and because they don't have to cut back production. Why are they doing it? They're doing it because they're fed up with the behavior of the United States, and then they
Supply
get
and
some.
demand.
Yeah, that's right. That's very good. And then they have this, what do they call the guys? Some bigwig in Saudi Arabia was on the news, and he was saying that he's warning the United States that cutting back on the strategic oil supply is very risky.
The reserves, yeah.
The reserves. Do you know how much? Diesel runs everything. Diesel is the ships that bring things back and forth. It's the trucks that bring our food to the grocery stores. It's without diesel, trains, everything. Do you know how much strategic reserve supply of diesel we have now, Scotty?
No.
Enough to supply the country for 6 hours.
Whoa.
It's frightening.
That is.
Yeah. And it's just stupid. The way things are being run right now is just plain stupid. And I'll tell you what's going to happen is that if we do run out of diesel and the whole thing collapses, the whole economy collapses and people are starving and the grocery stores aren't supplied and yada, yada, you know what the politicians are going to say? They're going to say, well, that's proof that we shouldn't be dependent on oil. You get that? Yeah. It's just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. Netanyahu, I guess, is running. I don't keep posted with it, but that Israeli former prime minister, I guess, is running again. Netanyahu. I don't know a lot about politics of Israel. I just don't. But one thing I do know is I've seen him speak a number of times, and every time I've heard him speak, I thought the guy was great. And maybe there's something I'm missing. I don't know. Isn't it ironic now that the Democrats are the hawks? The Democrats are the one that wants to fight the war in Ukraine, and was Hillary Clinton was the one that bombed Libya. Wasn't that how that went? And now it's the Republicans that are the doves. Everything is just flip flopped. It's just unbelievable. Free speech. Wasn't it the Democrats that were in favor of free speech? And now it's the Democrats that are censoring people. Everything just round and around we go in this senseless amazing cycle of paradigm identity of, anyway. The truth is there. It's hidden in plain view. It's just becoming open to it, not being so engrossed in a perspective that you ignore what's right there in plain view. And that's called ignorance. And it's due to that why people even abandon religion. Why? Because it's not being expressed in a way that interfaces with the mentality and the way people think today. It doesn't make sense anymore to current thinking. And it does make sense. It just needs to be expressed properly. All right, Scotty, if there's nothing else, I think we're done.
That was a good one.
All right, everybody, thanks for listening. And we will talk with you again next week.